Today, I have a special show. Many of you have been watching me cover the Attorney General Letitia James and her mistreatment of President Trump. Well, I believe karma is about to bite her in the butt, and I want to introduce you to somebody that is helping make that happen. Joel Gilbert, thank you so much for joining me today.
Okay, thanks. Good to be here.
So, just some background. Joel is a film producer as well as an investigative journalist. He has been breaking this story as a guest journalist over on Gateway Pundit. Help my audience. I've been covering this a little bit with Roger Stone on my own and with lawyer Robert Jovier, but give my audience an idea. What do you guys have on Letitia James, and is she in big trouble?
I think I've uncovered a tremendous amount of evidence, along with Sam Antar at whitecollarfraud.com, demonstrating that Letitia James was engaged in serial mortgage fraud for many years on several properties. And that the irony is breathtaking because it was Letitia James who said, "No one is above the law. You can't have a little person manipulate the system and get away with it." And prosecuting Donald Trump for very suspicious, bogus charges of inflating real estate values, which probably were not even true, and that Trump had nothing to do with. It was people in his organization that simply suggested to these banks when he took out loans what they thought the value would be based on comps at the time. And they told the banks, do not rely on our figures. You have to do your own valuations. And the banks, of course, did their own appraisals. So the persecution of Trump was completely irrelevant, not based on any facts whatsoever. So it is very ironic that I think I have discovered with Sam and others that Letitia James, in fact, may have gotten the idea of prosecuting Trump for mortgage fraud because she was a serial mortgage fraudster. And that's what I've demonstrated in a series of articles on the Gateway Pundit.
Yeah, there's at least 5 of them that I took time to go through, and I appreciate you sending that information over. Okay, the first one that I want to talk about with you to better understand is she takes out a mortgage with her father, but not as a father or somebody helping with a down payment or somebody who co-signs on a loan with a personal guarantee, but signs on as husband and wife. Tell my audience about that one.
Well, it's back in 1983. Letitia has 7 siblings. She's living in a 2-bedroom apartment with her mother and 7 siblings. Her father has moved out some years ago and bought a house with his girlfriend. So Letitia's stuck in this 2-bedroom apartment with 8 other people. And she graduates from Lehman College. And this is before she goes to law school. She probably has no job, or she's working at a fast food place, doesn't have any money, but she identifies a townhome that's 880 square feet in Queens that she'd like to purchase because she wants to get the hell out of that apartment. And she probably does not qualify for a mortgage at 24 years old with no job or very little income. So she recruits her father to pretend to be her husband on the mortgage. And I pulled that mortgage from the public New York State property archives that show that she took out a mortgage as husband and wife and even signed it on the next page as husband and wife with her father, Robert James. It was no typo. So the reason they would have done that is because she would not have qualified on her own to get the loan, and she could get better rates with a person like her father who had a steady income. So it's absolutely mortgage fraud to do that. Misrepresentation of a relationship to obtain a loan is mortgage fraud. Misrepresentation of your economic status, also mortgage fraud. So actually on the deed for the property, they put it correctly. It was father and daughter. So it shows that to get the mortgage, they absolutely fooled the mortgage company by pretending to be husband and wife. And when they sold the property years later, they also sold it as husband and wife. I believe the New York Times is trying to say it was a typo, but there's just no way it was a typo. It was all over their documents, and they signed it as husband and wife. So that's the number one thing. Now, that's quite a long time ago. I don't know if it's something that's actionable, but it shows where she started her pattern of mortgage fraud at a very young age.
Yeah. Obviously, she would know that she is not married to her father.
Yeah.
She would know that she was. So that, I guess one of the big ironies, Joel, is they said that Trump manipulated the value of his property in order to get a better interest rate. Well, she, it appears, knowingly put down that she's a married woman to a man that has money, that has the down payment, that has the credit score, to get what? A better interest rate, and to secure the loan in the first place.
Yeah, in that case, you probably would not have qualified at all, let alone gotten a better interest rate. So there she is, 24 years old, and she's already in the practice of mortgage fraud, and it's going to continue as we talk about my next articles and her additional properties.
Okay, yeah, please go on. What is the next one?
Well, the next one is in 2001, Letitia, for $550,000, buys a 4-story apartment building in Brooklyn, 296 Lafayette Avenue. It's 4 stories, and it's actually divided into 5 apartments. That's very important. This is the certificate of occupancy. You probably got it, but it says in this official designation by the city of New York, it's a 5-apartment building, 5 units. Now, this is very important because what happens is over the course of 20 years, Letitia is refinancing this property several times. And each time she refinances, she tells the mortgage company it only has 4 units. Now, that might not seem like a big deal, but it is, because when you have 4 units or less, your property qualifies for a lower interest rate, a residential rate. When you have 5 units or more, it's going to be a commercial building, higher interest rates. So of all her illegal loans that she did, the biggest one that stood out was something called a HAMP loan. It was a homestead loan from the U.S. government under the TARP program in 2011 to assist small homeowners and small business owners. Now, the federal government program under the U.S. Treasury only allowed for 4 units or less. It was not eligible if you had 5 apartments or more. Now, Letitia in 2005, let's back up to 2005, she had refinanced for an adjustable rate loan that went between 7% and had a ceiling of 10.2%. That's 2005. Now, 2011, interest rates had gone up. She was probably paying close to the 10% per year. So she decided she'd like to refinance her 10% loan on the back of the American taxpayer. She applied for a loan with HAMP, which is only 2.7%. She wanted to reduce her loan from 10%, get a government loan of 2.7%. The problem is the HAMP loan from the Treasury Department only was eligible to 4 units or less. So sure enough, there it is on her mortgage application. She claims that she only has 4 units, even though her certificate of occupancy says it's 5. There is no other legal designation. If you want to change your number of units or combine them, you've got to go through the process and get a new certificate of occupancy. Second illegal thing she did on the mortgage, in the mortgage fraud, she was required in the government HAMP loan to get the 2.7% mortgage to declare a hardship. You had to have a financial hardship. So sure enough, she says, and she declares in writing and signs it, I cannot afford to pay my mortgage. Well, wait a minute. She was making $125,000 a year as a city council member, and she made about $50,000 a year from her apartment rentals. So she's making about $175,000 a year, or $14,000 a month. Now, that's not a hardship. So I think she also falsified that statement to get the government HAMP loan. And you might have seen the U.S. Federal Housing Department, FHFA, with Bill Pulte, actually submitted to Pam Bondi at the Justice Department, referred a criminal referral to investigate Letitia James based on that very issue, that she applied for a loan from the U.S. Department of Treasury and falsified the number of units in her building and falsified her income in order to trick the U.S. government to provide a guaranteed loan on the back of the taxpayers at only 2.7% when she was not eligible for that.
Wow. Okay, so I mean, all of this stuff is documented. It's been to a county recorder. It's got signatures. Do you know what kind of legal penalties does this have, on top of the fact that if she really has a primary residence in Virginia, doesn't that disqualify her from being the Attorney General of New York?
Yeah. By the way, this is the handbook for, this is the Making Homes Affordable Again program right there from the Treasury Department, and eligibility for 4 units or less. So yeah, Sam Antar actually looked at the Norfolk, Virginia home that she purchased with and for her niece named Cherie Hairston. And in that application, to get a lower mortgage rate, Letitia claimed that that would be her primary residence. Now, what happens is the banks and also insurance companies will give lower rates for people that live in their primary homes because they think they take better care of it and they have better results. If you're buying a home for rental, or leave somebody else in it, it's unattended, they have higher mortgage rates and higher insurance rates to cover that because the homes are not as well kept up. So that's another, appears to be a clear case of mortgage fraud that appeared in the referral to the Department of Justice, that she misrepresented that she would be living in that home in order to get a lower interest rate and lower mortgage rates. It's also insurance fraud. So that's something that she just can't do. If she's the New York Attorney General, living in Brooklyn. By the way, I don't really understand why she's not living in Albany, which is, if she's the state attorney general, why is she still in Brooklyn? But she does live in that Brooklyn house. She cannot claim that her primary residence is in Norfolk, Virginia. So that's another pretty cut and dry. You either live in Virginia or you don't. You either married your father or you didn't. I don't see how she can explain her way out of it. She did release a statement yesterday in response to this referral to the Justice Department, and she simply said that she wouldn't be intimidated and she was going to keep fighting Trump. So she didn't deny any of it or have an explanation for it. So I think she's in big trouble.
Yeah, I hope so. Obviously, like, just as you were talking the last 3 minutes, all the words you were saying, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the Trump trial all over again.
Yeah.
Mortgage fraud, the banks having issue, lower interest rate, insurance fraud. The thing that's interesting is every single bank said actually attracting Mr. Trump was good. It was financially beneficial to the bank. We made like 40 million in interest. He paid back all of his loans. Meanwhile, Letitia James is filing for a modification, lying about her income in order to get a better interest rate through government programs. Unbelievable. Do you believe? Okay, so this has been referred for an investigation. Do you believe that Pam Bondi and others will take this up and start going after her, because nobody's above the law according to her?
Well, there are some issues with Pam Bondi, which we're waiting to see how she's going to behave as Attorney General. I actually wrote an article today on American Thinker about Pam Bondi's hand in the launch of Black Lives Matter. She's ultimately responsible for Black Lives Matter. A lot of people don't know that, but I produced a film called The Trayvon Hoax about 5 years ago, where I exposed the prosecution of George Zimmerman as being based on a fake witness. They used Rachel Jeantel. You might remember the hefty Haitian American girl who claimed to have been on the phone with Trayvon right before he was shot, and said she heard things on the phone that were different from the eyewitnesses, 911 calls, and from Zimmerman and everything. So the prosecution relied on this girl's statements of what she said she heard over the phone that contradicted all the evidence. And I found out that Rachel Jeantel, who was 150 pounds heavier than Trayvon and 2 years older, was a fake witness. She lied. She was not on the phone with Trayvon. She was not his girlfriend. I found in my movie the real girlfriend was named Brittany Diamond Eugene. She was a nice-looking girl, 16 years old. Ben Crump even had a press conference before Rachel Jeantel appeared on the scene, and he said she's a 16-year-old minor child, and he begged the press not to contact her because she was a minor. Then 19-year-old Rachel Jeantel shows up and says, Diamond Eugene was just my nickname. And so the Zimmerman's defense attorney said, well, we'd like to depose Ben Crump, because Ben Crump and Trayvon Martin's parents met with Diamond Eugene before Rachel Jeantel came on the scene. They said, let's depose Crump and find out why did he say she was 16? And Pam Bondi put out a 40-page document saying that they shouldn't be able to depose Crump. Pam Bondi should have looked at the evidence of the Sanford Police Department, investigated George Zimmerman, and they exonerated him. They said this is self-defense. But what happened is Obama was running for president again in 2012, and they weren't sure if the black community would come out again to support Obama because everything had gotten worse. The economy was worse. Illegals were coming in, taking over jobs. Obama did nothing for black people. So they wanted something to inflame the black community to get them to come out and vote again. And they identified this case as a way to do it. So they sent Ben Crump and Al Sharpton down to have all these street protests to get Zimmerman arrested, even though there was no evidence. So Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of Florida, she could have and should have said, well, let me look at the police report. And she should have said, I've read the police report. There is no evidence of any kind other than self-defense. Zimmerman was getting his brains beat out, broken nose, choking on his blood, eyewitness, and he fired a single shot to save his life from being beaten to death. Pam Bondi should have said, see you later. Instead, she appointed a special counsel, Angela Corey, to start an investigation. And of course, Zimmerman got arrested. And of course, when they had the trial a year later, Rachel Dintel showed up and she couldn't keep her story straight. And Zimmerman was acquitted because she was a fake witness. Black Lives Matter was then founded based on the acquittal of George Zimmerman. So if not for Pam Bondi's not having a backbone, we'd have no Black Lives Matter, no Ferguson, no George Floyd. DEI would still be just a wacky subject in a sociology department in the Ivy League schools. It would never have happened. So she has a track record of having no backbone and causing a lot of damage. So a lot of us are wondering if Pam Bondi will really, be a MAGA attorney general for Trump, because Trump's biggest failure in his first term was he did not take control of the Justice Department. The media and the Democrats screamed, don't touch the Justice Department. It has to be independent, independent. And Trump was intimidated. He didn't take control of the Justice Department. And they investigated him with the Mueller investigation. They indicted his campaign manager, Manafort, put him in jail, indicted Roger Stone, indicted Flynn. Trump was too intimidated to take control of it. Well, of course, when the Democrats got in, they put in Merrick Garland and went after everybody, including Trump. So it remains to be seen. I mean, Trump tried to get Matt Gaetz in there, but he had to pull out. He appoints Pam Bondi. I don't know if he knew about her role in Black Lives Matter. So she's on TV quite a bit, but so far we're concerned about whether she's going to follow through.
Yeah, I've heard that complaint. It's like, hey, listen, why aren't you at your desk arresting people instead of being on Fox News for the 500th time in 78 days? So,
yeah.
Okay. And then there was another story about a nonprofit for Letitia James campaign. Help me understand that one.
More chicanery. There's on her campaign disclosures, there's a company called New York Communities for Change right here. New York Communities for Change. You probably pull it up. New York Communities for Change is a 501c4. Now, a 501c, that's a nonprofit. 501c3 is a nonprofit also designation, and they can't have anything to do with politics whatsoever, like a church. 501c4 is also a nonprofit, and they can do some political activities, very limited, like they can post something on Twitter, political. They could hold an event and invite a politician to speak. That's about it. They're not allowed to participate in any campaign or align themselves with any campaign. Sure enough, Letitia James, for her campaign for public advocate, hires a nonprofit called New York Communities for Change. They provide campaign workers, canvassing, staffing, phone, rent. She turns a nonprofit into her campaign workers. So that was illegal. So that's another thing she should be investigated for, is illegal campaign activity. There's actually another area of investigation, which I just published today on the Gateway Pundit, 2 articles in one day.
Wow.
Gateway Pundit today about a very shady foreclosure that she was involved in, Letitia was, that also involves possible campaign violations. And I'll tell you about that one. So Letitia's mother is from Martinsville, Virginia, a very small town. And there was a mother and son named John Z. and Philip Finney, and they had their home foreclosed on them by the Wells Fargo Bank. So Wells Fargo holds an auction on the steps of the courthouse to auction off this home. Sure enough, the buyers of the home are the same people that were foreclosed. John Z. and Philip Finney, and Letitia James is the third purchaser. They purchase it together. So it appears that this couple, or this mother and son, recruited Letitia to come and help buy their home back for them. Now, they could have been friends of the family or neighbors or even relatives of Letitia's mother, is probably why she did it. And interestingly, on the auction deed, on the foreclosure deed, when they buy it, Letitia spells her first name Letitua instead of IA. So I kind of wonder, because she was a New York City council member, was she trying to hide her involvement? Now, what's wrong with this is that 3 weeks later, they create a deed after the foreclosure, which has to be paid immediately. I'm sure Letitia paid it. And then 3 weeks later, only that mother and son, John Z. and Philip Finney, appear on the deed. Now, that's actually not legal unless there was a sales transaction between Letitia James and the Finneys. She couldn't have been left off the deed. So there's something wrong with that. So she maintained an interest in the house. She actually owned it 100% because she paid for it. But that was never reported on her campaign disclosures either. So that also warrants an investigation. So all these cases, starting when she's 24 years old, show a pattern of disregard for the law. The idea that she can manipulate banks and manipulate mortgage companies and insurance companies for a financial benefit. Again, the hypocrisy is breathtaking based on her prosecution of Trump.
Yeah. Yeah, you had to put out, maybe tongue in cheek, does all of this just come down to daddy issues? Um, and I mean,
Yeah.
but I think at the end of the day, she does feel above the law. Maybe like Fauci, who said, "I am science." Maybe she says, "I am the law. I can do whatever I want. I can buy a house as my primary residence in Virginia and still be the attorney general with all the power and privilege of the great state of New York." I don't know. Either way, the hypocrisy stinks to high heaven.
Yeah, well, I did put out that article that maybe she has daddy issues. That's the source of her rage against Trump, because I did document how, she had 7 siblings, and her father moves out of the 2-bedroom apartment, where there's 8 kids and the wife, and actually buys a suburban home with his girlfriend in Queens, a very nice 2-story house, leaving Letitia in the 2-bedroom apartment with 7 brothers and sisters. Her father never buys a home for the family, but he buys one for his girlfriend. So Letitia certainly could have affected her and made her angry person and desperate person. She did recruit or get her father to pretend to be her husband to buy a home only a couple years later. That maybe is something she did to try to, even things out. But she obviously feels that she's always struggling, always trying to get over. She's always got to get over. She bought a 4-story apartment building in Brooklyn, but she feels instead of paying 10% mortgage that she had legally and legitimately, she wants the U.S. taxpayer to subsidize her at 2.7%. It's almost like she's always trying to get her father figure to take care of her, the one who abandoned her as a child. Going after Trump, I'm sure there was some, jealousy there about his success in real estate, and she always had to struggle. So it's definitely worth reading. We call them the Letitia files. So the Letitia files on Gateway Pundit, and you can really follow this story to the end.
Okay. I'm going to put those down below for people so that they can follow it. I'm hoping, Joel, just like you, this goes from the Letitia file to Letitia Gate. And
Yes.
this thing actually gets investigated by Pam Bondi and maybe the FBI forensic team. They can dig in. To me, this really stinks. I do believe she has bad feelings towards Donald Trump. She probably says, "Oh, here's a white man who had a silver spoon in his mouth and he got to be rich." It kind of reminds me of Michelle Obama at the DNC convention. She said, my mom told me to be wary of people that take too much. Yet look at the Obamas, like 4 or 5 houses, tens of millions of dollars. She gets paid. I mean, she could fart on camera and get paid. I mean, like this is now the silver spoon on the other mouth. So Joel, you're doing great work. I look forward to having you on to expose this even more. Any final words before we wrap up?
Yeah, well, I've got a new film out called The Climate According to AI Al Gore, where I expose the origin of the climate hoax. So go
Okay.
to climatealgore.com, climatealgore.com. You can see the movie trailer and link up to live stream or buy the DVD. And I got a new film coming out in June with Roseanne Barr called Roseanne Barr is America, the iconic comedian. And that's coming out in June. Check out the trailer now. It's roseanneisamerica.com, roseanneisamerica.com. And I'll look forward to coming back again.
Great. Yeah, I would love to promote both of those. We'll put those links down below. Yeah, not a lot of Al Gore's dire predictions have come true, have they?
No, I can tell you all about it. Look, briefly, Al Gore in 1992. By the way, I worked for Al Gore. I was an intern, a student intern, when he was a conservative U.S. senator from Tennessee, myself being from Tennessee when I was a student. So I got to know him a little bit. And in 1992, he came out with a book called Earth in the Balance, actually, right there. And in this book, that was his climate manifesto in 1992. And he admits that he's not a scientist. He says, look, I really don't know any of this, but I got this information off of my Harvard professor. So trust me, his name is Roger Revelle. I got it from a class I took for 3 months. So I went down to the archives of his Harvard professor, Roger Revelle, and I pulled the class that Gore took. Turns out it was only about human populations. It had nothing to do with the climate. Gore gets a C in that class. So he definitely didn't get the information from that class. Also, his professor wrote for 30 years stuff about the climate, completely disagreed with Al Gore. So I started saying, well, where did Gore get this stuff from? It's like he talks about this climate apocalypse. It's a spiritual crisis. It's this whole manifesto. And I looked at Gore's attendance at divinity school. He got out of Vietnam. He was in Vietnam for 4 months, and he got out of Vietnam by applying to divinity school at Vanderbilt. And he went there for 1 year. And I look at what he studied. He studied with these radical environmental professors. And on his reading list was this crazy book from the 40s called Our Plundered Planet. And it was about how humanity is destroying the world. It says, don't worry about the nuclear arms race. We're all going to die. So I read that book, and I read Gore's book, and I realized that Gore just plagiarized this book. He rewrote it. And so when he came out with his climate manifesto, he couldn't say, I got this out of a wacky book I plagiarized from the 1940s. He lied and said, I got it out of Harvard. So I exposed this whole hoax, where it really comes from. And you learn that the whole climate agenda is really the same old story that nobody would vote for. It's all about wealth redistribution and central planning by these elites that want to take power from we the people.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Thank you for that. That's interesting. Yeah, I've always felt like he didn't fully believe his own message based on the size of his house, how much he travels in private jets. But we will definitely put those links down below so that people can check that out, as well as the Gateway Pundit links. Thank you so much for coming on last minute. I want my audience to know about this, but I want Letitia James investigated, because I believe she was pointing a finger in order to take the attention off of her own fraud. So, Joel, thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Okay, thanks again.